How amazing was that? I think it's a real honor when our clients share stories like that. And I know it's a big thing to ask somebody to publicly be on camera and speaking about that at such emotional and difficult moments in their lives. So just a very big thank you to everyone who always is willing to do that for us. I hope when you were listening to those stories that you can hear what sits at the heart of the work that we're doing, because it's what we're constantly reminded of as we listen to our clients, why this work matters, why access matters, why getting support to the right people at the right moment matters. Behind every referral, advice session, statistic is a person just trying to find their way through a very difficult situation in their lives. And this morning we've talked about evidence, partnerships, technology, and where we're headed next. So now we want to spend some time reflecting on what it actually takes to make that happen. And we're going to do that through 2 panel discussions. And then we're almost done. And then there's food, you guys, okay? So it'll be all good. The first is all about systems, which we're really excited. And how do we embed advice into the places where financial difficulties are already showing up? How do we scale what works? How do we do that without losing the trust, quality, and independence that makes advice so valuable? And to help us explore these questions, I'm very delighted to welcome Leon Ward, the CEO of Money Ready, who will chair our first panel. Please welcome Leon to the stage, please.
That was a quick time check note there, because I think a few of us noticed. Good morning, everybody. My name is Leon Ward. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Money Ready, which is a financial education charity, if you've never heard of us. So we're starting at the earlier end, teaching kids about money, and there's nothing more powerful than seeing a year 6 child, 8, 9, 10-year-old sort of chanting the difference between APR and AER through the rhyme that we tell them. We won't be doing that today, though. The panel today that we've pulled together for you is going to think about just reflecting on the 20 years of history that we've just heard about of debt-free advice, and the role that partnership has played in helping Londoners access free, independent advice. We've also heard, though, about a wider shift in how Toynbee Hall is using that partnership experience, shared infrastructure, and innovation capability to reach people earlier and in different settings. So I'd never heard of advisor intelligence before I came here today, or about Money Penny, or Penny Money, whichever way around it was. 2 really clever innovations that we are seeing. And not only that, but we've heard about the prisons work and also the Macmillan partnership. So today, for you, in 20 minutes rather than 32, which was the original script. So God knows how we're going to get through all this, but we will give it a go. I'd like you to join me, and if you could just hold your applause to the end of all 4 names, just to save a bit of time. Oliver Morley, who is the Chief Executive of the Money and Pension Service, the national body responsible for improving people's financial well-being. Dr. Summer Alston-Smith, the Chief Executive of Clinks, the national infrastructure organisation supporting the voluntary sector working in the criminal justice system. Robin Seaton, the Executive Director of Contracted Operational Delivery at the Ministry of Justice, with responsibility for major operational services and partnership across the justice system. And lastly, Derek Knott, the Director of Services at Macmillan Cancer Support, leading work that supports people affected by cancer across practical, emotional, and financial support pathways. Please welcome to the stage.
Nice to meet you.
Okay, so now we've whittled through that bit, we can relax a little bit. Okay, this is for the whole panel, so we're just going to keep it simple and go in running order from my left. From the systems that you fund, lead, or work, what are you seeing about the relationship between financial difficulty and wider well-being outcomes? I'll start with you.
Thank you very much, and great to be here for the 20 years of debt-free advice. So from our perspective, obviously, it's absolutely critical we see everything as a single system. We work right the way across the UK, but when it comes to debt advice, particularly in England, and we see that the key element of making things work is being there at exactly the right time with the right partner. We talk about collaboration that gets results, and when we fund, that is what we're absolutely looking for. It's not just about making sure that you have, that you are ensuring that you've got people operating on the front line, working with clients and customers at all times. It's also making sure that when they do so, they're in a position to be able to succeed. And I think some of the things we've already seen today just show how important it is that they can succeed and really work with clients in a way that makes sense for them. And to do so, you have to be there at the right time. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about what that actually means.
We will. Summer.
Thank you so much, and so lovely to be here today in this beautiful setting. I know it's a shame about the rain, but so wonderful to have some time outside as well. As we've done the complete opposite to being outdoors and outside and in beautiful settings, the work that we do at Clinks is supporting voluntary sector organisations who work in prisons and probation. We see how financial insecurity is vital to the work that happens, and we've heard a little bit about that this morning. But I'd invite everyone to really think about placing yourself in a situation where you have access to no or low wages. In 2022, the payment in HMP Send for a week of prisoner work was £13.93. So you get a sense of what income you're able to access. We're thinking about a situation where you lack access to banking, insurance, ID, and really, fundamentally, that digital exclusion, not just in the access to devices, but also in skills, means that you are shut off from the world around you to deal with anything to do with your finances. So picture being sentenced at court and then going straight to prison with no preparation, what that would mean for all the bills that I'm sure everybody in the room is used to juggling on a regular basis. Meeting that with then an inability to apply for universal credit until you've reached release, the issues around the family pressures that you're facing, the fact that by virtue of the fact that you've gone to prison, you are deemed intentionally homeless. You have made yourself homeless, which restricts your ability to access certain benefits and so on going forward. And really bringing that all together with the key issue that we heard about today, which is a sense of stigma and shame that's compounded by having a criminal record, and what that means for your opportunities going back into the world with probation restrictions, including things around travel restrictions and where you can locate yourself, and what that means for your ability to get yourself out of that debt and into a place of financial security. So it's fundamental to so many intersectional needs for the populations that the organisations that we work with serve.
Great, thanks, Summer. And continuing the theme of the justice system, Robin.
Thanks, and thanks for having me here today. I think just building a bit on what Summer was saying, from a prison and probation service point of view, our core mission is protecting the public and reducing reoffending. And there's 80,000 people in prison at any one time, and about 250,000 people on probation. And of those, about 40% or more have got a challenge that they're facing on the debt or financial front. The drivers of reoffending are multiple and complex, and they interrelate. Debt is clearly part of it. There is substance misuse, there is housing, there is education, there is employment, there are family relationships, and depending on how these things go, they can be protective or risk factors. But you can see the financial connection between all of those things. So if we can get in there, as we've been seeing earlier with the debt advice kiosk pilot, further upstream, we can have an impact not just on the quality of somebody's financial well-being, but also on a bunch of those other risk factors that we're talking about. And that partnership between HMPPS and debt-free advice and others is really critical. I always say that we've got to be really modest about what we're good at, because there's some stuff that we're really good at, but there is some stuff that we are just not expert in, and there are much better people out there. And it's the strength of those partnerships that I think is really powerful.
Great, thank you. And lastly, Derek, just thinking about the video that we watched of the lady that shared her experience, can you just talk a little bit about why practical financial support being understood as part of good cancer care rather than something separate from it is so important?
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm delighted to be here today. From a Macmillan perspective, we've got an ambition to be there for every person living with cancer, and we see that cancer has a profound impact on people's, every aspect of people's life, whether that be practical, emotional, clinical or financial. From a finance perspective, we're keen to be there from point of diagnosis, so getting there as far upstream as we possibly can, because from an income perspective for those people in work, having to work reduced hours, having inadequate sick pay, or sadly, people losing their jobs, which we see, day to day. That can create, a real financial shock for people, which is really difficult to come back from. If we look at the other side from a cost perspective, the sheer volume of medical appointments can increase travel and transport costs, being at home more, feeling the cold that can present when you're going through treatment for cancer, increases heating costs, and then just trying to keep yourself well, from a diet perspective, it all adds to the day-to-day living costs that people face. And all of those living costs are absolutely critical for people living well through cancer, helping them recover well, but also helping avoid some of the psychological well-being impacts that we can see, when people are not well from a finance perspective. So getting there upstream, supporting people practically and ensuring that finances are connected with practical, emotional and clinical needs is absolutely imperative to helping people live well through cancer.
Thank you. So all of you have spoken about the sort of way that this cross-cuts across people's lives. Oliver, as the person in charge of MAPS, does what you're hearing today and sort of MAPS' experience of this change how national funders think about financial support services and their role within the wider systems? And if so, what is MAPS doing as one of those players?
Yes, definitely. I mean, from our point of view, we think about new services and think about working with partners in three ways when the principles we use. The first is that we design for most in need. And I think the Prison Pilot is a really good example of a service which absolutely takes that thinking right up front. The second is that we're trying to be there for the moments that matter. And the issue with, obviously, from the prison perspective, is that if you come out without having been able to think about your financial position, that makes a real challenge. And when we are thinking of the context as a whole of building these services with partners, it is making sure we are going exactly where people are. And again, making sure that we can be there in prison at the right time is critical. So taking those three principles, and I would say it's never easy to develop new services in prison. Certainly, I've seen that in the past. It really makes it worth it. Really makes this whole program worth it from our point of view. We want to see it get wider, right the way across the country, and the potential is huge. So from our point of view, taking those principles, developing them in ways that really work with partners, and I think the Macmillan work as well really evidences that, is how you make a real difference when it comes to funding. And that's certainly when it comes to our thinking right the way across the country, is how can we develop new services, and when you start bringing in technology as well, how can you bring in new services that really meets client needs in something that, in a way that is different, innovative, and makes a difference.
Thank you. And Summer, as the CEO of a charity that's often in receipts of money from funders, do you think that the sort of wider funding sector is convinced about the emotional and practical impact that money worries have, or is there still work to be done? Because everyone in this country says we don't like talking about money in this country, which I don't think is actually true. My view is everyone talks about money all the time, especially when they've got a little bit, to be honest. And it's really nice hearing a arm's length body representative not talk about lack of funding for once, actually. So thank you for doing that. But Summer, do you think that wider ecosystem understands, or is there still work to do?
I think that, particularly in the world that we operate in criminal justice, and as Robin explained very eloquently, there are so many needs that cut across each other and intersect. And what I think that underpins all of them is listening to lived experience voices. And what the voluntary sector is really good at is centering those voices at the heart of their operations, their thinking, their planning, and their design of services. And I'd love to see more recognition of that there is a genuine, not tokenistic, but genuine value placed on lived experience, input in design and shaping of services, and that draws funders to the table across whatever need comes to the fore, but particularly thinking about the unique circumstances around financial insecurity when it comes to criminal justice. including things like the increased exposure, and I'd say unique exposure to exploitation, harmful forms of debt like loan sharks and so on, that really listening to the community voices, linking that with strong services that have been developed in response to that is what funders want to see more of, and then they show a genuine appetite for that.
Okay, and Robin, coming to you, thinking about the MOJ's role in this and the partnership that we've spoken about quite a bit today, what do you think gets lost when trust, lived experience, and community reach are treated as secondary to scale?
Yeah, I think service design with clients' experiences and perspectives at the heart of it is absolutely critical. I think sea change is too strong a word, but I think there has been a change over time in the way that the central government thinks and acts about how it designs services. You see that particularly in digital, I think, where we've got a kind of a more agile approach, I would say, than in the past. I think there's a really obvious case from our perspective that if you design a service without a client at the heart of it, then you design a worse service, you get worse outcomes, you are spending money poorly. And if you're having to have conversations with the Treasury, as people like I occasionally do, which is always good fun, then demonstrating that you're driving the best bang for your buck you possibly can is absolutely critical, and this is at the heart of it.
Thanks. And just staying with the theme of centering client, service users, lived experience, whatever language you want to use, and every organisation will use a different one. Derek, how does it work at Macmillan when you've got, as the video was showing, people that are thrown quite quickly into chaos, for want of a better word, their life is turned upside down? How do you then engage those voices at a time that is right for them, just so people in the audience can understand sort of how to do this if their organisation is still thinking about it?
Yes, we put lived experience at the heart of everything that we do, but as you say, there is a right time to engage with people in a way that's appropriate for them, based on where they are in the cancer journey. And it's about opening that conversation, in really meaningful ways, understanding, where they are at the point in the cancer journey, understanding, what their experience has been. And we've got a number of different touch points that we have, directly and through partner organisations to understand experiences. But it's about building that relationship and rapport and finding a time where you can talk about their experiences, talk about what's worked well, but talk about what can be done differently, to help people's journeys in the future be all the more better. So it's about engaging at the right time for us.
Thank you. And thinking about one of the other themes that's come out quite a bit today is the focus on human relationships and how AI and other technologies are available cannot replace the importance of that. So a question for all of you, and again, we'll just work down this way, is in that world, where can technology genuinely improve access and consistency, and where should organizations be cautious?
So we have the Debt Modernisation Fund, which I think is around 4.5 million that we've been, with the support of obviously Treasury and HMRC, making sure gets to the sector more widely. We really are trying to facilitate, obviously, we've seen a brilliant example of the use of AI in supporting advisors and more widely. I think it's really important to remember that people are using, our clients are using technology in lots and lots of different ways themselves. And when they engage, if you listen into calls, you can hear people bouncing in and out of different channels and going to different help, different sources of help, different chatbots. I think a really important thing to consider is not just that AI is going to be an important part of this technology landscape, but also understand how many different voices our customers and clients are going to be receiving, and how we can make sure that they are getting the best help in very, very difficult circumstances. So working out how to coordinate and ensure that they're getting quality is, I think, a real challenge for us going forward.
Thank you. Summer.
I think that sums up so many of the kind of crucial things around the guardrails and safeguards that we are all forming in situ as things, the track is sort of in progress and there's a real runaway speed around AI. I think that it offers lots of exciting opportunities for how we can enhance the work, the volume of work, and dealing with the complexities, as mentioned earlier, I think is really exciting. I do think that there's a need to reflect and consider, and that hasn't really been built into processes and everybody's enthusiasm to think about how we onboard AI in our day-to-day practice. And even as an example, with the voluntary sector in particular, there's something about being true to our values and our ethos and considering things like the environmental impact of AI has really been glossed over, but actually is really fundamental, not only to the root of the third sector, but also to our staff and those that we work with. So how do we reconcile some of those more difficult questions, and and how is the space being created to think about some of these issues collectively?
Thank you. Robin.
I think in the custodial sector, we're not always known for being at the cutting edge of technology. I don't think that's too controversial a thing to say. So having tablets in prison that gives you access to a debt advisor is a real leap for us. And the ability to expand that and having a scalable model that you could potentially take nationwide, because we've been on a journey whereby I think debt advice has been kind of under-recognised as an important thing for us. So the ability to scale, the ability to create efficiency is a really great thing for us. If you had people going into prison to do this in person, they'd be travelling there, they'd be standing at the gate, getting their stuff scanned, getting scanned, waiting for somebody to take them to go to a room, all of which, you're about 2 hours, 3 hours into your working day before you've actually done something useful and given somebody some advice. So the scalability and the efficiency here is a really powerful thing. I think as other members of the panel have talked about, human connection is at the heart of this. This is an emotional business, and good quality interpersonal reactions are the core of what happens in prison and probation, and at the core of what drives good outcomes. So I think using the tech in a way that maintains and supports and enables that, as we've heard about, is fundamental to its success.
Thanks. And Robin, just thinking about the guardrails, how welcome have Macmillan service users welcome the technology? Because I think in the video it was saying, you can access it at your bedside if you want to. Has that been welcome, or have people been a bit weirded out by that? Like, what's the picture look like?
No, so we always start with a person living with cancer and understanding what their need is. And as Robin talked to in terms of the practical logistics of getting a member of staff to a setting and going through a process that entails, being able to deploy technology to get people access to service and support much quicker than we possibly would have done is naturally a benefit for organisations providing service and support, but more importantly to that person living with cancer going through the most difficult point in their life. What we've done is looked at each stage of the cancer journey from point of diagnosis all the way through to whatever their outcome is. And what we tend to see is there's a pronounced need at point of diagnosis, but also where treatment's coming to an end. And what we've done is worked with people living with cancer to understand where technology can add value. So from a holistic needs assessment at point of diagnosis, understanding the practical, emotional, clinical, financial needs, face-to-face or through digital technologies, right through to using WhatsApp for direct messaging where people can't or aren't able to talk by virtue of the cancer that they're grappling with. We've tried to look sensitively at where we can deliver more effective, more efficient services, but whilst always putting the person living with cancer at the heart of what we do.
Thank you. And in some ways that brings two parts of the discussion together, which is if you centre service users, that is a good guardrail for AI and new technology. I don't know who's supposed to tell me to stop, but I can't see them. So I always believe in asking for forgiveness and not permission. So we'll do this final question, which is, if we came back in 5 years' time, what would convince you that financial support had genuinely become more preventative, more connected, and easier for people to access earlier? Starting with you, Oliver.
It's a really hard question. I mean, I think the key thing is that we are, as we've all been saying, is we are earlier in the process of debt advice, that we can tangibly find people and address their issues before they start getting into crisis. And there are ways we can track that, but clearly that would mean better outcomes in debt advice more generally, and therefore more people with their lives being turned around, as we've been able to see right the way across lived experience. and more widely. So if we can get to that, and I would hope we can use technology, I would hope we can use the right funding in the right place with the right partners to do so, then that would be a real move forward.
Thank you. Summer.
I think it's that financial advice and financial security is considered in a holistic way, so it cuts across services, that the service users that we work with have a sense of confidence and empowerment on how they approach their financial matters, and that cultural nuance is picked up, so that no matter what your background or what community you're from, you feel equipped and enabled to engage with the tools available to you to secure your finances and that of your families.
Thank you. Robin.
So I think I'd like to see us delivering services earlier in people's prison journey, kind of around induction. I'd like to see more kind of targeting and data-driven approaches. I'd like to see the tech embedded as a standard approach rather than as a pilot and a consistent service nationwide. And ultimately, that should be reflected in better outcomes, which is what we want to see at the end of it.
Thank you. And Derek.
Yeah, everything that everyone else has said. Plus, for people living with cancer, 4 in 5 people report that they're financially adversely impacted once they get a cancer diagnosis, and that can run to several £100s a month. What I'd like to see is, less people affected and less people, financially at a loss just by virtue of getting a cancer diagnosis.
Thank you. And that is a wrap. So I'm handing back to Kate. Thank you, and thanks to our panellists.
Thank you, Leon. Thank you so much.